Which of these emotions are welcomed at the divorce table? All of them, because your emotions are worthy, and so are you. Welcome to the first episode of Worthy Emotions Podcast. My inaugural guest today is attorney mediator Cris Pastore. Cris is the attorney mediator at Mainline Family Law Center right outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Cris has over 20 years of experience as an attorney mediator, choosing to help couples settle their disputes a different way, the amicable way. And that way saves money, saves time, and saves trauma to our children. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Cris and you learn a lot for yourself and for others. Welcome, Cris Pastore, attorney mediator Cris Pastore, to the launch episode of Worthy Emotions. And I am so glad you are here with me as my first guest. How's that feel?
It feels great, Pam. All the work we've done over the years, and this is just another opportunity to be with you. Could talk to you all day long. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, let's get right into it, Cris. So divorce is one of the most emotionally charged events a family can experience. And I know this personally. Research shows that unmanaged emotions can make divorce longer, more expensive, and more painful for everyone involved, especially the children who didn't ask for any of this. But when couples choose mediation, they're already signaling a willingness to handle things differently. So, Cris, as a divorce attorney mediator, you guided countless couples who want to stay out of court. So from your perspective, let's launch this conversation with this question. How do emotions show up in mediation, and how do they affect whether mediation succeeds or fails?
Well, I can say it makes all the difference. Emotions will make or break a successful mediation, just like they would make or break a successful divorce going to court. So the difference here is that in mediation, there's always emotions, no matter what, because this is a human emotional process. In mediation, although it can get highly emotionally charged, the emotions they're a lot of the same emotions, but they're quite a bit more tempered when they come to our process.
Okay.
And they're actually screened at the very beginning. And these are one of the things that we focus on more than anything else is what's some of the emotional dynamics we're dealing with to see if they can even be a viable couple. So we do a lot of work up front and a lot of screening before they can even become a mediation couple with us. So we're very discerning in that respect, because in the end, we want them to succeed by our process. We want their family to succeed, and we want to be able to help them in the way that they need to help by minimizing a lot of what typically comes with a divorce, if you go down another path. That being said, and we can talk more about this, the mediations are very much the same as what they might be feeling if they were going to court. They're just a little bit more tempered, and which makes it certainly easier for the mediator to work with. And the fact that we do a screening up front, it helps with that as well.
Cris, what are some of the things you're looking for in the screening?
Well, we're looking for, we're looking for respect, really, mutual respect, and with an understanding that they're not coming to the mediation process and looking to weaponize the other spouse, because that's not what our process is all about. And I always tell them up front, if you're looking to come here and use this as a means of punishing your spouse, that's not going to work. And so I'm very, very forceful about that up front and telling them that you're not going to succeed by this process if that is in fact your agenda. So the agenda has to be true. Yes, we're not going to be a couple anymore, but what do we want this to look like together? If we have children, especially, how do we want to show up for them afterwards? And it is in our best interest to preserve the family if we can come here, work with one another, and temper our emotions with one another as best we can. Not always easier said than done, not always easy, but they have a willingness to want to do so. And that's the difference.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like that's a needle in a haystack. That couple is a needle in a haystack to find them, those who are mediation open and mediation ready. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, listen, there's no prejudice about it at all. It is rare to find, it's more rare to find, but you'd be surprised at how many couples are either in this posture already or are interested. How do we get into this posture? Because it's very important for our family that we get into this posture so that we can end this marriage the right way. So you'd be surprised. The divorcing community, they're very, very aware of their options. They're very, very well informed. They're well researched. So they know oftentimes coming here what's at stake before I even have to tell them. And that was something that we didn't experience many, many years ago. Though we've gotten a much better quality of client for mediation simply because they come more informed and more educated.
Yeah. And that's great to hear too, that they're coming more informed and having done their research, knowing that there are options here. I feel like that's good news.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Well, on that, I want to ask you this. Most couples walk into mediation with years of hurt and anger, for sure. But in your experience, what's the most common emotion you see at the mediation table, and how does it impact the process?
It's a great question. And the answer is not what you might think it is, because you might think, well, it's a divorce, so someone's angry, right?
Yeah.
Someone's pissed off, somebody's jealous, somebody's vindictive, right? Not so much with our couples, because oftentimes, if those dynamics exist or existed, by the time they've come to us, they have worked through some of that, a lot of that, to be in a position to think about mediation. So again, when I say earlier, they're educated. They're not going to call our office unless they know that reasonably they're in a position like that or can get in a position like that. So more so the emotion that we find is this idea of fear and uncertainty for the future.
Sure.
I think that that's universal in any divorce, and no matter who's coming and what the circumstances are. Yes, of course, there's leftover anger sometimes from the marriage. We try to talk through that at the outset to make sure we can just dispatch of it if possible and put it behind them, which oftentimes we can. But this idea of fear and uncertainty, because that is the emotion, that's the one emotion that can be the most paralyzing of all, you know? And what do I mean by paralyzing? You know, when I'm afraid and I'm unsure, I can't make a decision about anything, right? It's very, very difficult, you know.
Fear, unmanaged fear, can absolutely affect one of the core competencies of emotional intelligence, which is called decision making. People may not think that a competency of emotional intelligence is decision making, but it is. And when you're unable to manage the fear, it affects how you make decisions, whether you're in mediation or whether you're in litigation or whether you're in collaborative experience. It really does have a huge impact. But with that said, Cris, so fear and uncertainty, are they uncertain about the process, would you say, or are they uncertain about what happens after the divorce takes place, after they get that bang, your divorce decree?
It's a good question. Sometimes it's both, and sometimes it's one or the other. But usually it's not just fear of the process, uncertainty of the process, because I lay all that out for them. So they see very clearly what the process is and what it's going to be. And more often, I would have to say, if I were to compare the two or assess the two, would be this fear of, I don't know what I don't know. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. It's understandable. Think about this huge undertaking. They're about to unearth such a huge transition that they've never felt before in their life. It's very, very daunting, and especially for the dependent spouse, the spouse that maybe coming into it who's not employed, or they need to get back to work and they have to think about, all right, what kind of support do I need and for how long? You know, because support does not go on forever and ever. You know, that's not how the system works. So how do we plan for that? And that to me is the single most thing that I see when it comes to this uncertainty factor, especially with a dependent spouse.
Do you think then that the independent spouse has running in the background of their minds, this person is going to take me for everything that I've got unfairly? Do you think that is a concern or fear of the independent spouse?
Absolutely, 100%. Even if they're not saying it overtly, they're thinking it every time.
Yeah.
So what I do is, and again, this is part of emotional intelligence, I think, as a practitioner, is to recognize that pain point up front, whatever that pain point is for the particular spouse in the room, and make sure you present things in a way that dignify. So with respect to the independent spouse, that's what he or she's thinking. And so what I do is I present things in a way to help to demystify some of that concern, some of that mystery of, how much am I going to have to pay? And how does this work? Am I raked through the coals, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. You deal with couples, and so many of your couples, I would assume, have children that are part of this. Would you say the majority of the couples that go through mediation with you have children?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to talk about the children for a moment, because the work that I do and why I'm so deeply committed to it in this divorce space, Cris, as you know, is because the children are so deeply and directly affected by the decisions that the parents make, the decisions to argue in front of their children, the decision to get a divorce, the decision of how they interact with one another during and post divorce. Like that has such a huge impact on the psyche, the health, the well-being, and the future success of their children. So my question for you is, your firm has already made a declaration to focus on building healthier futures for families. Can you share a story, of course, without naming any names, and you can adjust the facts a little bit so nobody listening was like, wait, that's my attorney, what's he saying? But a story where emotions, either managed or unmanaged, directly affected the children's experience of divorce.
Oh, yes. There are many examples, but I'll think of one that comes to mind. This is a classic example as it impacts children. We have a case that couples come to our process, and sometimes one or the other spouse or both will get a consultation with an attorney before they come into the mediation. I always encourage that because that can be enlightening, So when that happens, in a particular case where that happened, a father in the case of a couple with children went to talk to his attorney, had a consultation, did not retain the attorney. And the attorney said, look, you better go into that mediation. You better ask for at least 50% physical custody of your children. He came from the point of view of, dad and kids. And, if you don't go in there and ask for it, you're going to get, God knows what will happen, and you're going to get screwed, whatever, which doesn't happen in our process. We don't look at genders. We're looking at the best plan for the children to maximize time with both fit and loving parents that are our parents in the process. So, but in this case, the attorney said, you better go in there not asking for anything less than 50-50. He goes in there. Now, the dynamic is that one of the children, his daughter, he had a daughter, wanted no part of dad. Okay, no part of dad, that they had not been getting along for years. And then the divorce just exacerbated the relationship. And to the point where she didn't even want to see his face. Okay. And, so then we get to the mediation and, he sits with our parenting mediator and he's coming in there guns a-blazing, 50-50, 50-50, 50-50, right? And however, the daughter doesn't want any part of him at this time. Okay. That doesn't mean forever and ever, but right at this time. Okay, that's just how the dynamic presented to mediation. And so what we did was we impelled the couple to focus on what is in the best interest of this child at this time. Okay, let's stay focused on that and not on me versus you versus me getting more time versus getting less time versus getting screwed, right? Mm-hmm. What is in the best interest of this child right now? Okay. And so what our mediator was able to do was to talk to dad and say, Dad, look, I understand, you have certain rights. And if you went to court, blah, 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 more or less, if you're a fit and loving parent, you're going to be asking for 50, half of physical custody. Mm-hmm. But we've got to look at the particular dynamics at play here. All right. Because if we right now, the way your daughter feels, and this is only temporary, if we put on paper that she's going to be with you 50% of the time, and this is not really what she wants right now, and more importantly, not what she wants, but what is going to make her thrive right now, then you have to be the bigger parent at this point and recognize that and say, look, this is what she needs right now. This is the plan that we need for her. And if it means that I have to forego time with her right now,
Mm.
then I'm willing to do that. We kind of presented this concept to him. Although he wasn't happy to hear it, it made sense to him. We went ahead and implemented a plan, but we said, look, this is not going to be forever and ever. Let's just commit to it for a couple months. We did it for a while. The relationship took a couple months to improve.
Mm.
Before long, we're in there to modify the plan for daughter to have time with dad. And so we recognized the dynamic. We needed to get in there. We needed to address it. And we needed to, again, stay focused on what was necessary for that child at that time. And we provided for that child. We allowed for some time. And then guess what? The whole relationship improved.
Mm. And imagine what would have happened if
Oh,
dad insisted that 50-50 is the way to go.
right.
How even more fractured that relationship might have been between not only dad and daughter, but mom and dad.
Yeah,
I mean, it would just blow up everything. Just
yeah.
that insistence that I get half.
Yeah, not to be understated between mom and dad, because what would have happened if they were going to court? More than likely, right? The attorney who's there to do their job, right? And that is to get, in this case, to get my client 50% custody. Then what happens is we see this happen a lot. I've got 50% custody on paper, right? But that's not worth a hill of beans if my child doesn't want to be with me, and that's going to cause friction between me and her, and friction between me and the co-parent.
Yeah.
And so then what inevitably ends up happening is that now we have 50% on paper, but daughter doesn't want to go with dad. And now mom is in court trying to modify custody to take away dad's time, and because, or whatever, and now they're in court trying to force
Yeah.
certain relationship between father and daughter that just can't be right now. And that needs time. It needs time to work itself out,
And
Mediation saved them all of that aggravation.
they saved what you all were able to do. I'm going to translate that into the emotional intelligence EQ realm for a second, is stress. You help them manage the stress that was sure to come if they had gone down this 50-50 route. And in the emotional intelligence realm, one of the components of stress management is called flexibility. So that dad demonstrated
Yes.
flexibility, which is imperative to the stress management that was required to make this work. And that's really impressive how you all were able to help him see that and that he was willing to agree to that.
Thank you. And 100%. And it was all on dad there. If dad was not, as you say, willing and flexible, that would have never happened. So we just presented the idea. We can lead a horse to water and make him drink.
I like that. And I would say you lead a horse to water, the horse has to drink. But the way you set up the barn, the way you decorate it, the way you have the supportive staff around it makes for drinking a lot easier. So kudos to Mediation and Mainline Family Law Center. Let me ask you one more question before we get into one of the fun parts of this podcast that we're going to do together. So I'm going to turn the tables to you now for a second. So Cris, mediators are attorneys and they are human also. Can you recall a time when you felt your own emotions rising in a session? And what did you do to stay grounded and effective? If you stayed grounded and effective, and it's okay if you did not stay grounded and effective, but give us a story about that experience.
Yeah, I'd love to. My story will illustrate, if you wouldn't mind, I've been waiting all this time. I have my own definition of what emotional intelligence is,
Oh, yes.
Because it's a subject very near and dear to me. Honest to God, I think about it a lot. So there was an instance, more than one instance, but in particular, where the female party, the wife, started to lay into the husband and started to berate husband and started to berate all men, not just husband. And she took it a step further, which I felt was extremely unfair, right? Because, not all men, not all women, not all human beings are created equal, right? Got good apples, we got bad apples, we got a bunch of apples in between, And that was fine. But then she started to attack me too. Oh, you're being biased because, it's a good old boys club. And, you guys, I wouldn't be surprised if you were talking beforehand about stuff here. And, I've gotten that a handful of times. But the first time I got it as a young mediator, this is years ago, being a little bit wet behind the ears, I took it personally.
Mm.
And now what did I do? How did I handle that?
Yeah.
And so what I did was the first thing I had to do wasn't easy, as a young mediator, take a step outside of myself. Okay. This is not about me. It's never personal. And this is what I think leads me to how I look at emotional intelligence, how it would help me to solve a problem like this that would come up. So I developed an acronym, CAA.
CAA. Okay.
So cogitate, analyze,
I'm sorry. Cogitate, analyze,
and adapt.
adapt.
Yes.
Okay. Cogitate, analyze, adapt. Okay.
While a lot of attorneys are doing CYA, I'm doing CAA. Okay. Now, what that means is, in this case, is that first thing I had to do was step outside of myself.
Okay.
To tell myself that this is not about me, never was about me. I'm here to serve this family. Okay. And so I have nothing to do with this. Okay. So remove yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you do that, analyze the situation, analyze the dynamics. Where is husband coming from? Where is wife coming from? Where are the pain points? Right. And then how can I present this thing in a way that dignifies both? And that is the real skill of the mediator. And this is why this is the most challenging job I've ever had in my life, because now it's not just having to deal with the dynamics and personalities of one person. Now you got to deal with two separate personalities. And what I'm talking about with this principle, this is something that happens in a hot second. It's something that in your mind, you just process quickly, right? Boom, 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 boom. Remove yourself, analyze, and then adapt to the situation. Okay. Mm-hmm. And what is it that I can say to these people? What is it that I can tell them that will inspire confidence in each of them, in the process and in each other? Because once they start losing faith in each other, then we go down another path. So again, emotional intelligence to me has nothing to do with how far did you get in school? What grades did you get? What degrees did you get? Throw that out the window. It's about being able to sit there, remove yourself from the situation, recognize, analyze, and adapt, and then figure out, okay, what am I going to tell these people in a neutral way so that I can dignify them both? Not an easy thing to do.
Do you remember what you said to them in the adapt? What did you say that made a difference?
Generally, first of all, I assured wife that I was not in any way, shape, or form offended. I understand how difficult this process is to begin with. Right? I reminded them that this is a human process, to forgive themselves, to forgive each other, and that I have nothing to do with this. This is never personal to me. So when I started with that, it kind of disarms them to begin with. Mm-hmm. And then you address each one of their pain points separately. So with wife, you want to address that, look, I understand how you feel. I understand some of the concerns behind this. And here's some ideas where we can help you to overcome. Husband, I understand. I feel like you're feeling attacked right now. And here's kind of why it's happening. But this is not serving either of you well for the process, and reminding them of their commitment to the process and why they came to mediation. And in some sense, letting bygones be bygones. And they don't have to be perfect in this process. They just have to be able to respect one another through the process, Yeah. And so I remember using the word respect a lot. And
did you find your own emotions calming down as a result of the CAA technique?
Yes, it did. And each subsequent time this would happen in a mediation, I became more adept at it and recognizing it and just in a split second being able to deal with it. And the minute that I demonstrated, because those guys are looking to you,
Yeah.
you as their leader, the mediator. And once I demonstrated how I handled the situation, then it had a trickle down effect on them and it
Wow.
worked as well.
You demonstrated self-awareness and self-regulation. That's again in the EQ language, which is fantastic. Because if you can't be self-aware and if you can't self-regulate, you cannot be a leader in helping other people self-regulate and become self-aware. It's just not possible. So that's a really great story that you've shared of how could have been caught up in the mix. Because I would imagine that when attorneys are caught up in their own emotions, they don't make it easier for their clients.
Right. 100%, 100%. And not easy to remove yourself at whatsoever.
Yeah.
But it's what really distinguishes a mediator from an attorney who wants to mediate, but really doesn't have the experience or the training.
That's a good one. That's a good distinction there. You can't just decide you're going to mediate without having the training behind you, because I'm sure in mediation training, they introduce some aspect of emotional intelligence or self-awareness.
Yeah, they may not couch it that way, but it's inherent throughout the whole training.
Yeah.
And in order to be able to do that, training is one thing, but you have to have the right personality, the right temperament for it.
Yes, yes, yes. Good. All right. So are you ready to go into what I call rapid fire answer completion?
We'll see.
Okay, so here's how it goes, Chris. It's only one rule, which is to finish the sentence, the first thought that comes to your mind. So I'm going to start a sentence, and your job is to complete the sentence with the first thought that comes to mind. Are you ready for that?
I am ready.
Okay, I'm going to give you 4, complete the sentence. Okay. The emotion I wish I saw more often at the mediation table is
Consciousness.
consciousness. Okay. The biggest mistake divorcing husbands make is
By showing up a little bit too proud and unwilling to accept help.
okay. The biggest mistake divorcing wives make is
In showing up to mediation in devaluing and shortchanging themselves.
ooh, that's good, Chris. Okay. 2 more. When a couple divorces, the emotion they often can't let go of is
I would say sentimentality over
say that, say more. It's interesting.
sentimentality over what is happening and all the sadness that causes. Maybe we want to use the word sadness.
Yes. That's
You know,
yeah. Okay.
because it can be a sad process to let go, and to let go of many years of memories and good times and bad times and moving on. So
Yeah. That is a big one. Last one. If I, Chris, could give one piece of advice to every divorcing couple, whether or not they do mediation, it would be to do more of X and less of Y.
So to do more of, I would say they need to have more empathy and forgiveness for their spouse and for themselves too. That really is the key that unlocks the door to open communication
And less
of course, anger and hostility and looking into the past and dragging that into the present and making it a part of the present. Anger, hostility, just old patterns and behaviors.
yeah. Yeah. So more empathy and less hostility and anger. Gotcha. All right. Well, Chris, we're coming to the end. I could talk to you all day too. So we're going to do 2 more things before it's time to let you go. This has been such a rich conversation, but I want to give the audience 2 more nuggets from you. First, can you share a resource, maybe a book, article, or even a perspective that you believe most divorcing parents don't know about, but should?
Okay. Well, actually, there is a book resource that I was aware of. I'm glad you asked me this question. It's a book that I've read, and it helped me to better hone in on my skills
Mm.
and to hone in on this idea more on the emotional intelligence piece and how I can use and implement that to serve my clients. So, of course, it's available on Amazon, and the name of the book is Letting Go: The Art of Mindful Divorce. Abby Zane, Zane, is the author. Just a fantastic book. She stresses the importance of not blaming yourself or your spouse for the divorce, seeing the bigger picture of everything when it comes to children finances and all the practicalities, looking down the line, and all the steps that you need to take, to design these next steps in your life. First, let's help you, and she will help you in this book, to let go. Just let go.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
the most difficult thing to do in a divorce.
Thank you for that resource. Okay, the last that we're going to do is something that's going to be a signature activity in the podcast. And so this is called the one word emotion challenge question. So what you're going to do is you're going to complete the sentence. And this sentence is, or this question is for the future guest that I have on. I don't know who that future guest is. You don't know who that future guest is, but there are guests lined up. And you're going to ask them, how can you, future guests, help your client feel, and you're going to give one word emotion during their divorce process. Now, I'm going to pull up a grid of a number of emotions from which you can choose your one word emotion for this question. But before we do that, I'm going to kick this off by asking you first, Cris, since you're the first guest, and then you're going to then do the question for the future guests and so on and so on. So are you clear on the question?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Now I'm going to pull up on the screen a list of emotions, and I just want to walk you through it before I randomly choose the emotion I want you to address. All right. Can you see the screen?
That's perfect. Yeah.
Okay. So as you can see here, I'm going to orient the audience mostly to this because I know you got it really quickly. We've got red up top left, blue at bottom left, yellow top right, and green at bottom right. But it's on a scale from low pleasantness at the bottom to high pleasantness in terms of emotions. The left on the right side here, we have low energy to high energy. So I want to stay in the yellow, high energy, high pleasantness, and the green, low energy, high pleasantness grids. We already know couples are coming in on this side, left side of the grid, right? But what we want is to move them into the yellow and the green. So I'm going to randomly choose an emotion, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to put my finger, content. Okay. I put my finger on the screen. You can't see it, but the random is in the high pleasantness, low energy grid, content right here. All right. So Cris, my question to you is, how can you help your clients feel content or contentment during their divorce process? And then we're going to switch, and you're going to leave this same question with a different emotion for my future guests. Okay, so go.
Okay, how can I make them content?
Feel content in the divorce process.
Well, of course, when I think of the word content, we know that there's happiness and there's contentment, and I see a difference between the two.
Yeah.
So contentment is the realization that, hey, I can't wake up happy every day. Content is a relative state of mind. It's not perfect. It has some good and bad days, but overall, I'm content.
Yeah.
And to make a spouse in a divorce, through our process in mediation, feel as content as they possibly can be, I would say the biggest contribution I can make is to make, and I used the word earlier, and it's a word that's near and dear to me in the work that I do, in that I want to make each spouse feel dignified by the process. Dignified by the process. I find that when I do that, validation is another one. When I find that they've come to our process and they felt that they've been dignified and validated, that they open up and blossom like a flower in most cases. And they're in a position now not only to make the best of an unfortunate situation, but then also to emerge from it into the future with a lot of hope.
So contentment almost sounds like a byproduct of you helping them feel validated and understood in the divorce process. And that's what you take on as your job, to make them feel that validated. Gotcha.
Validate doesn't mean I sit there and I kiss their butts and I lie to them. I'm very genuine
Yeah.
in doing that, because I found over the years that that's all anybody ever wants,
It's true.
and not just those going through a divorce,
It's true.
but especially those going through a divorce. Yeah.
Yes. Facts. That's great. Now, Cris, it's your turn to form the question to my future guests. I'm going to put the emotions back up on the screen. You're going to randomly pick one and you're going to form the question to my next guest. Okay. You ready for part 2 of this?
Okay.
All right. Here is, once again, the mood meter grid. By the way, giving credit to who created this, by Dr. Mark Brackett. Thank you so much, Dr. Mark Brackett. All right, Cris, randomly choose an emotion from the top right or bottom right.
Okay. So we're staying on the right.
Yes.
All right. I like the word balanced.
Okay, great. So hold tight. Now, frame the question for my future guests, that one word, emotion word in it.
Okay. So how can you, as a practitioner, help a client to be well balanced through the process with their emotions? How do we help to balance those emotions? Because we know that they're at the heart center of a successful divorce, as we said at the outset. So how do we help to balance them?
Yeah.
What are the specific steps that you take, techniques that you use, approaches that you take to help each spouse with that, knowing that if we can balance them, they have a better shot.
Yeah.
Success.
Nice. Well, Cris, thank you so much for joining me today, being my very first inaugural guest. You've reminded us that mediation works not just because of the law, but because of how emotions are handled at the table. To my listeners, remember this truth as you move forward. What you feel before, during, and after a divorce matters. For you, for your children, for the future you're building. And until next time, take care of your emotions, because they are worthy, and so are you. Thanks, Cris.